A motherland of the almighty Latin King-Queen nation is Chicago, where the gang is believed to have been established sometime during the 1940s. The founders of the Kings were attempting to attain strength and power by forming a gang along racial lines. Many recruits joined the Latin Kings while in prison, and then continued their involvement upon their release. While Chicago was the starting point, the Kings have since spread to other urban areas, such as New York City. The Latin Kings in the New York area found themselves under new leadership beginning in the mid-1980s. In 1986, Luis Felipe, aka King Blood, founded and became the self-appointed leader of the New York State chapter of the Latin Kings, an organization which, according to the defendant, was designed to promote a sense of Hispanic identity among prison inmates and to organize Caribbean Hispanics serving jail sentences. The aim of the organization was ostensibly to protect Hispanics from ethnic discrimination at the hands of other inmate organizations and hostile prison authorities. Subsequently, a civilian component was formed under Felipe's leadership, often consisting of former inmates. The government described the Latin Kings in less benign terms as a racketeering enterprise whose members and associates engage in acts of violence, armed robbery, narcotics trafficking, and murder. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. At all times, Felipe participated in the Latin Kings activities from his jail cell. It started at the Collins Correctional Facility in Hellmouth, New York, where he was serving a 9-year sentence for second-degree manslaughter, arising from the death of a woman in 1981. Later, after May 1993, activities continued at the Attica Correctional Facility in Attica, New York, to which he had been transferred. His leadership of the organization was maintained by corresponding with, receiving visits from, and sending written directives to various members. In early April 1993, while Felipe was incarcerated at Collins, New York State Department of Correctional Services, officials learned that he had violated prison regulations by attempting to kite letters to an inmate at another facility with whom he was not authorized to correspond. From the letters, officials learned that Felipe was the leader of the Latin Kings, an organization they deemed an unauthorized prison gang, and, as such, was actively recruiting more members into the organization. Authorities also became aware of the fact that the Latin Kings were planning illegal acts. For example, one letter promised to send an inmate a Latin Kings manifesto through his mother, and further stated that an unidentified person whom Felipe believed had betrayed the Latin Kings deserved to die. Later that month, Felipe did try to send a copy of the manifesto to an inmate, which dock officials intercepted. As a result of these violations of prison regulations, Felipe was transferred from Collins to Attica, a maximum security prison. In addition, as a result of his activities and the doc's knowledge that he was the leader of the Latin Kings, he was adjudged a prison security threat. The department thereafter requested a mail watch on him, pursuant to New York State's regulations governing correspondence by inmates incarcerated in state correctional facilities. Those regulations allow a prison superintendent to authorize the inspection of outgoing and incoming mail if there is reason to believe that the correspondence threatens the safety of any person or the good order of the facility. Authorization for the mail watch was renewed every 60 days while Felipe was incarcerated at Attica. The letters and correspondence intercepted by dock officials established the defendant's plans to murder and contained directives to carry out the homicides of 6 individuals: William Cartagena, Ismael Rios, Rafael Gonzalez, Margie Carteret, Ronnie Gonzalez, and Pedro Rosario. On June 21, 1994, Felipe was arrested on charges of racketeering activity that included murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy to murder. He was later indicted on 18 counts for his participation in 7 racketeering acts. Felipe was known for his fiery writings about his ideals and ambitions for the Kings, and his followers carried his message and his orders outside the prison system. During the decade-long reign of King Blood, it is believed that the King's numbers grew significantly in New York, with some estimating that members now number in the thousands. At the time, law enforcement officials considered the Latin Kings to be one of the stronger and more violent gangs in the state, and the Kings had spread from New York to parts of New Jersey, Connecticut, and other eastern states. In New York, they have their heaviest presence in East Harlem and Brooklyn. While the Kings call themselves the almighty Latin King-Queen nation, it appears that the female component of the gang is nearly always attached to a male-dominated unit. Male kings occupy nearly all of the high-ranking positions in New York City, even though the queens do have female leaders of their own. Members often wear beaded necklaces and clothes in the colors of the gang, black and gold. They sometimes greet each other with a hand symbol, forming a crown with their fingers. They also use as a greeting the phrase "Amor Dirit," or love of the king, and by placing a fist near to the heart, signifying to one another, "I am willing to die for you." According to police intelligence reports and former gang members alike, the hallmarks of the Latin kings are these. There is a hierarchical structure, with leaders whose orders are absolute. Violence is a common means of punishing those who violate any order or rule. While King Blood issued written prohibitions against stealing, adultery, lying, and using illegal drugs, the kings do approve of the use of murder and assault, and are known to make money from the sale of weapons and illegal drugs. The kings demand absolute loyalty to the gang and its leadership. Thus, not surprisingly, dozens of kings and queens lined up in the fall of 1996 to attend the criminal trial of their leader, Felipe. He was but one of over 50 Latin kings indicted following an investigation led by the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, in conjunction with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the New York City Police Department, and the Department of Corrections. The investigation resulted in the indictment of these gang members on charges ranging from racketeering to conspiracy to commit murder. Felipe, however, chose not to plead guilty and ultimately faced trial. Some of the most damaging testimony against him was given by two former Latin kings named Figueroa and Torres. Figueroa and Torres are themselves convicted felons, both having pleaded guilty to various crimes committed in the name of the Latin kings. While awaiting sentencing, both agreed to cooperate with a U.S. attorney by testifying against Felipe. In this way, both hope to be given a reduced sentence. Taken together, their testimony depicted the cold-blooded reign of Felipe, who managed to maintain control of the Latin Kings organization, even though he was incarcerated. Figueroa made periodic visits to Felipe at Attica, a New York State correctional facility where Felipe was serving time. There, Figueroa testified. He reported to Felipe transgressions by various members of the Latin Kings. In some instances, Felipe gave Figueroa orders to beat or kill the offenders, and it was Figueroa's job to have these orders carried out. Figueroa and Torres recounted for the jury some of these terminations, or killings, ordered by Felipe. The Latin kings refer to such assassinations as terminations on sight. Similarly, they use the term beatdown on sight, or beatdowns, to refer to assaults on errant members, assaults intended to injure rather than to kill. According to Figueroa and Torres, King Blood ordered punishments for such infractions as the failure to obey Blood's orders, for espousing teachings that conflict with the set rules, for making advances toward King Blood's queen, and for stealing from the king's treasury.
Let's get into some of the violence that took place. In May 1993, King Blood Felipe began to view fellow Latin king Rafael Gonzalez, aka King Mousy, as a threat to his leadership, and therefore enlisted William Cartagena, aka King Lil Man, a friend and subordinate leader of the kings, to kill him. When Cartagena proved unsuccessful at killing Gonzalez, Felipe enlisted 3 other Latin kings to commit the murder. On October 30th, 1993, those 3 individuals elected 5 other kings to carry out Felipe's assassination order. The 5 kings went to a building where Gonzalez was supposed to be, and they shot and killed Gonzalez's brother-in-law, Victor Hirschman. They fired shots at Gonzalez too, and although they seriously wounded him, they did not succeed in killing him. Unhappy with Cartagena due to his failure to murder Gonzalez, and also because he believed Cartagena had stolen money from the Latin king's treasury, Felipe enlisted Jose Gabriel, aka King Teardrop, in July 1993 to strip Cartagena of his leadership, position, and have him murdered. Felipe also ordered the murder of Cartagena's girlfriend, Margie Carteret, aka Queen Margie, because he believed she knew too much about the organization's criminal activities. Figueroa and Torres described in chilling detail the execution of William Cartagena. So, because of the botched assassination attempt, Cartagena was strangled, decapitated, had his hands and gang tattoos sliced off, and was then set afire in a bathtub. Figueroa explained that the decapitation was performed because another high-ranking king wanted Cartagena's head as proof that the order to terminate him had in fact been carried out. Later that same month, they went for Cartagena's girlfriend, Queen Margie. After the kings who were selected to murder Margie Cartagen proved unable to shoot and kill her, they decided to burn the apartment building where she lived. Although Queen Margie escaped the fire, two of her neighbors suffered severe burns in the course of the conflagration. Next, Felipe ordered the murders of Ismael Rios, aka King Jr., and Ronnie Gonzalez, aka King Ronnie, in September 1993. This happened after they refused to follow the orders and aligned themselves in competition with Gabriel, or King Teardrop, who was second in command. The orders were carried out in January 1994 after Felipe deceived Rios and Gonzalez into believing that their dispute with him was at an end. Latin kings gunned down Rios and attempted to kill Gonzalez, who ran away and escaped unharmed. Pedro Rosario, aka Pete Rock, an inmate at Rikers Island Correctional Facility, was considered an enemy of the Latin kings because he had slashed several of that organization's members who were incarcerated with him. Felipe gave the green light to Latin kings at Rikers to assassinate Rosario in early 1994. After Rosario was slashed at Rikers, however, the Latin kings leader at that facility, Jose Cruz, aka King Blaze, issued an order taking the green light off of Rosario. Felipe overruled the order and wrote in a letter that Rosario must be terminated because he had attacked Latin kings, and whoever tried to challenge our nation in any kind of way or fashion must feel the almighty wrath. In another case, prosecutors said another gang member, James Gonzalez, was targeted for breaking rules barring homosexual acts and was shot and killed by other members in Manhattan. Also, there was the murder of Ronaldo Rosado. Rosado was gunned down as he left the store on Union Avenue in the Bronx on May 2, 1994, when Latin Kings members opened fire on people they believed belonged to a rival gang known as Unity. The testimony of Figueroa and Torres graphically depicted the brutality of the Latin Kings and the degree to which violence is integral to the operation of the gang. What is more, their testimony was supported by Felipe's own writings, which were introduced into evidence. He was ultimately convicted and sentenced to a life sentence and solitary confinement. Solitary confinement was the only means of putting an end to the cell block reign of Felipe, according to the sentencing judge. Thus, Felipe's conviction and resulting sentence put an end to the rule of King Blood. Zalma Ondino, aka Queen Zalma, was indicted with Luis Felipe and other Latin kings. She became the leader of the Latin Queens in late 1993. In that role, she was indicted for participating in the commission of at least 2 crimes. The first was the murder of Islander Navas, aka King Lex. Queen Zalma confirmed that a termination on sight order had been issued by Felipe against Navas and directed another Latin king to murder Navas at a location where she knew he would be. The order was carried out and Navas was shot to death in December 1993. Her second crime was the beating of Annette Martinez. Queen Zalma ordered a beating on sight after she learned Martinez was falsely claiming to be a high-ranking leader of the Latin Queens. A group of Latin queens and kings, including Queen Zalma, carried out the order on May 7, 1994, causing Martinez serious injuries. Although Ondino was also indicted for her alleged participation in several other crimes, including murder and conspiracy to distribute drugs, she pled guilty on October 10, 1996, only to conspiracy to murder Navas, conspiracy to assault Martinez, and using and carrying firearms in relation to the murder of Navas. She was sentenced to 18 years on her plea agreement, which did not call for cooperation with prosecutors. Out of 34 members that had been charged with crimes including murder, arson, kidnapping, and drug trafficking, all pled guilty. Even before King Blood was convicted and sentenced, a new leader of the Latin Kings began to publicly emerge, Antonio Kingtone Fernandez. Kingtone made it clear that he had grand ambitions for the Latin Kings, not unlike Felipe. However, he added a new twist. With the glare of media attention focused on the grisly testimony at Luis Felipe's trial, Kingtone announced a new higher purpose for the Latin Kings. The Latin Kings would henceforth focus on civic good and ethnic pride. The old ways of boss and TOS would be no more. So, there you have it, the untold story of the Latin kings and their grip on New York and beyond. Their rise to power, the brutal reign of King Blood, and the bloodshed that defined their legacy have left a mark that still echoes today. What do you think about the way gangs like the Latin Kings shape the streets and the communities they control? Would you like to hear more about the impact of these criminal organizations on modern society? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And as always, like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to click the next video above for more episodes on the Underworld, Icons, and the stories you won't hear anywhere else. Stay low, and thanks for watching.